What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie. Today, I'm here to talk about the big one, Halloween 1978. They have released it. Ever since they released that first Halloween box set way back when, this is the thing we've all been begging for. One day, we're going to get Halloween 78. We don't get all the shows, though I got a comment on my previous video in which I talked about the first show from this box set, not the first presented show, but the show from the 27th, which is the last two discs, but is the first show of the Halloween run. I got a video on that. Today, I'm literally only talking about the first three discs, the big show. Somebody made a comment that there is a plan to, I guess it's in the liner notes, which I've not read yet, to individually release shows 2, 4, 5, and 6, which are 2, 3, 4, and 5, which are really good shows. Better than the first show, in my estimation. I have them on bootleg cassette. But yeah, today I'm going to talk about the Halloween show. I'm not going to play music from it. I'm just going to rant and rave about it. And then it is an amazing show. It has the greatest things Frank does. It has the things that might annoy you about Frank. It is all over the map. It does not flow very well. It is super fun. There's a whole bunch of instrumentals in the middle. Frank is pretty much the only singer. So we get Frank singing stuff. You're like, oh, all right, good song choice. But did you have to sing it, Frank? An interesting listen. My plan is to talk about the entire show, all three discs. However, I don't want this to be a super long video because I have a lot to say. So I'm going to talk about disc 1 first, which is the first 70 plus minutes of the show. And then I'll look at the time. And if we're anywhere near 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to probably cut it, make another video because I don't want this to be super long. I like these shorter videos. So let's talk about this show. Let's talk about this release. We're just going to talk about the music. And the first thing we're going to talk about the music is it sounds amazing. There are a number of songs on here I don't ever need to hear again in my life. Dancing Fool. Not really. Keep It Greasy. Never liked Keep It Greasy. What else? Bobby Brown. That's an exception to the rule I'm about to state. Dynamo Hum. Songs that I've heard so many times, I'm like, is there anything new this song could ever offer me? And I'm listening to them on headphones. Oh my goodness, do they sound amazing. Interesting band. You have two keyboardists, Wolf and Mars. You have the percussionist, Man. Ike used to be in the band, but he left. So your only real sort of rhythm guitarist who can play while Frank is singing, because Frank can't sing and play at the same time, is Denny Wally. He's kind of underused. You have two bass players because once Ike left, Patrick O'Hearn came back in the band and was on bass. So you have Patrick O'Hearn and Arthur Barrow both on bass. Denny Wally on guitar. Kind of none of this matters because on drums, you got Vinny Colaiuta. And I'm just saying, there are so many songs where I'm like, I just want to listen to Vinny play drums in this because this is absolutely amazing. He elevates every song. He elevates every solo. Vinny is a beast. And the sound on this is amazing. I've heard these songs so many times, and yet I'm like, oh my goodness, that percussion by Ed Mann I've never noticed before. Oh my goodness, that organ work, those keys. I mean, the mix is fantastic. And I just love the way, as someone who has heard this music I've had these tapes since the late 90s, and I've listened to these shows. Haven't really listened to the 27 that much, but I've listened to these shows repeatedly on a cassette bootleg, and I love them. This, wow. Just sonically, wow. All right, we open up the actual disc with 10:31:78 show start, tuning, get to hear everybody's instruments tuning up, and then we go into the first solo, which is Ancient Armaments. This is an odd vamp to open a Halloween show with. It is slow. It's kind of dragged out. Kind of, as I was listening to it this time and could really, really hear it, like on really excellent sound, it kind of sounded like, and I've been listening to this solo, Ancient Ornaments, for decades. It was the B-side of Drafted Again. And I ordered something from Barfco Swale way back in the day when they had a phone number. And I believe I got this single for free, or it came with something, right? It was part of a package. So I've heard this solo so many times. It sounded better than ever. And it really, for me, sometimes for some reason sounded like a Steely Dan like vamp, but just on quaaludes. So it just became even like slower and more drawn out, and almost like there is an awesome, really low budget horror movie called Time Cave, filmed in Austin. It is amazing, super cheap, but their use of time and I guess time travel, and there is a scene in the cave where people move through time really slowly. That's what this vamp sounds like. It just kind of like it's like it's struggling to go forward, but Frank then just drops this really contemplative, almost introspective, philosophical solo over it. The Halloween vibe is not there. It's not rowdy. It's not uplifting. It's menacing in the fact that it's like, what is happening here? It almost feels xenocronous at times, like the rhythm and the solo were from different performances and Frank just laid them over each other. Feels like a lecture, feels like a monologue, but it is a fascinating way to open a Halloween show. Absolutely love Ancient Armaments. Then we get Happy Halloween, everybody. A lot of vamping while Frank is talking. We get a dancing fool, in which Frank is talking with the audience. He's signing stuff. Vinny. Like, I don't ever need to hear Dancing Fool again. But as soon as this starts and you hear everything Vinny's doing, you're just like, yeah, I'll sit through this. It's pretty good. Then we get an easy meet. It sounds great. The way the bass and drums are pretty much driving this. The way Denny's slide guitar just kind of lurks around. This is one of the two death vamps of 78. Patrick Buzzy, who is a lot of online pages documenting like particularly the 1988 tour. I've worked with him on projects way back in the day. He always called this and the City of Tiny Lights the death vamps because they just kind of ground you. Just the repetition of them, it became a little like just pounding you in the head till you were like unconscious. The mix in here sort of downplays the oppressive nature of these vamps, which really helps. At one point, Vinny just kind of starts swinging, and so there's this little swing, little energy going while the bass players are just like pounding away at that vamp. Solid solo, better solo than the one from the 27th, I would argue. But it's an easy meet death vamp solo from 78. This song would get better. Honey, Don't You Want a Man Like Me? Frank, we start it. Frank then stops it so he can sign stuff. He berates the audience because he's got to perform a song. Stop having me sign stuff. Then when he restarts it, it almost feels slower. And Honey, Don't You Want a Man Like Me does not need to feel slower. This is probably the one song on here. This song was played in the Winter 76 tour, which I'm obsessing about elsewhere on this channel, listening to every show from that tour. I enjoy those versions of Honey better than I enjoy this one. This one we need something in here, and the keyboard action's not doing it for me. Keep It Greasy, never, ever, ever been my favorite song. And this is also it's just kind of rough. Not the performance, the actual song. And the arrangement without like a really heavy guitar presence is also kind of weird. I've never liked Keep It Greasy. But these early Barrow-led versions are interesting because Barrow's on bass carrying a lot of it. There's a lot going on in the song. I just don't think a lot of it works. That goes into the Meek Shall Inherit Nothing. Love the chill intro. Love the slide in here. They're great. The percussion. This is one of those where like, oh man, the stuff Ed Mann is doing is pretty amazing. That's really cool. We get the City of Tiny Lights. This is the version that starts with the drums and the keyboard intro before we drop into the vocals. We get a Denny Wally solo. Denny Wally, why does that sound weird? Denny Wally solo. Frank has some really weird sounds going on in his solo. It's like he hit like 6 different effects and the result is just like, what is that noise? It makes it a lot more intriguing than normal. We get a little VCF action from Ship Ahoy, like a slight little VCF tease. Like he like hits the pedal and is like, oh wait, I don't want to go back to that, and like immediately abandons it, but it's pretty cool. Kind of super funky, weird sounding. It's an interesting City of Tiny Lights. The way Ed Mann is in the mix for the entire song is fantastic. Just kudos to the mix, man. Then we get the first of several epic epic Halloween moments. We get a Pound for a Brown. Now, Pound for a Brown is broken up into two parts. The first part is like a 5.5 minute in which we get the intro, plus we get the Ed Mann solo. The bass and drum work during that is just fantastic. And then we have indexed the rest of that on the tape I have. This is just like one epic 23-minute, 24-minute Pound. Instead, the 13 jam, which some of this has been released on Stage 6, a much shortened, edited version of this. The 13 jam is called 13, and it's a whole different track. So we start off with Frank introduces the Bionic Parrot. Apparently L. Shankar was wearing a parrot costume. So we get that. They start the 13 vamp, really builds nicely. Shankar's got some pretty manic energy, and nobody is better at matching that manic energy than Vinnie Colaiuta. So that's absolutely amazing. Frank comes in after Shankar's going for about 2 minutes. He starts playing. The mood kind of calms down for a while, as you hear on the Stage 6 version. And then Frank just goes off. Like, she's just like, whoa, I'm out of here. What the heck is happening? He's got these awesome tones. He's just doing these crazy runs. Shankar finally re-enters after like 4 really heavy Zappa moments, and then they both play around for a while as if they're battling each other out up in the sky above us, some aerial battle. Just absolutely amazing. Frank at some point drops in this, like, I think a mutated Inca Roads tease, and Frank takes off again. Then there's one point where Shankar and Vinny and Frank are going at it, and Frank's dropping that VCF effect. We get a Louie type jam thrown in there, or a tease, and then it's just more jamming. And then by like, when are we? We're like maybe 12 minutes into this jam, we're off the grid. I think 13 might be lurking underneath. Ed Mann might be holding down like a 13 vamp the entire time on percussion, but we're off the grid. We're off the freeway. We have jumped the high. We're Smokey and the Bandit. We're now driving through the woods. We're about to jump over like a Little League baseball game. It gets super psyche and evil and proggy. At one point, Peter Wolf tries to get a solo in, and then that just gets dark and moody. And then we get this weird, almost like Devo-esque jam where it's almost like boop, like you can feel like almost the robotic, like de-evolution nature of this jam, where things get super trippy and super weird and super out there. It's epic. And then finally, when we're done and everybody's exhausted, we get this nice little synth jam to end the whole thing. It's 17 minutes of pure musical improvisational bliss. Phenomenal. I mean, it's epic. It's an epic musical event. And there's more to come, and we're only on disc 1. But then, in pure Frank fashion, and really the only thing I can say about this that is positive is that it's the last two tracks on disc 1. So once you're done with Pound for a Brown, you can just be like, all right, I don't need to listen to these last 2 songs, maybe more than once. But Frank invites Warren Cucurullo on stage. Warren is not yet in the band. He was backstage at Baby Snakes, Halloween 77. He's back for Halloween 78. And he tells this sort of, spoiler alert, crying game, Lola type story about someone he met named Miss X. And goes on for 8 minutes. Frank's conducting the band in a pretty underwhelming, it's not like this really over-the-top conducting. He's pretty tasteful and letting Warren really be the center of the storytelling. But this is like, Frank had a whole compilation that he was going to release at one point called Warts and All. These are the warts, right? An 8-minute story by Warren Cucurullo of him, meeting somebody who wasn't who he thought he was, they were. So we get that. And then after that, he invites Nancy on stage. The girl from Disco Boy from Baby Snakes? I think that's what he actually says in this. And she gets on stage to share a sexual fantasy she has with Frank. And they edit this out. This is not on here. Like, the Nancy part is on here, but I'm almost positive that she actually shares her fantasy in the actual show. because this is a 2-minute track, and I'm pretty sure the entire thing's 5 minutes. And her fantasy involves, in a nutshell, something I wrote like decades ago. Her fantasy involves Frank, a horse, the beach, and her. All nude, of course, even the horse, because horses don't wear clothes. But that's gone. The story, the actual story is not there. So for some reason, that has been edited out, which I think is interesting. Maybe there was something with the tape. Maybe it's explained in the liner notes, which I have not read yet. Just focusing on the movie, on the music. So I found that to be low-key, kind of interesting. But that's disc 1. And we're like close to 16 minutes. So I'm going to wrap this up here. Drop this video for now. We'll get to disc 2 later because I have a lot of things to say about disc 2 too. Because that's also a pretty amazing disc. And I don't want this to be a 45-minute video. But yeah, a strong start. Like if you like Keep It Greasy and Honey Don't You Want a Man Like Me and you're okay with the Easy Meat Death Vamp or you haven't heard it, I think this is going to be you're going to absolutely love this listen. And more than anything, to listen to all this in really good sound, to hear every individual instrument, to hear mixes that aren't represented elsewhere in the Zappa catalog. We have a lot of live versions of this stuff, but I really think this presents this band. This is a weird sounding band. Vinny does a lot of work. We got 2 bass players. We got 2 keyboardists. We got a percussionist. Denny, completely underutilized on guitar. And Frank, at this point, doesn't play rhythm. He only plays solos. You very rarely hear Frank play anything that's not just a solo. And he's singing most of the songs, and he can't do both at the same time. So there's not a lot of guitar. It is a strange sounding band. But on this release, it sounds phenomenal. Based on the first disc alone, I'm loving this release. But that's all I got for now, because we're now at 17 minutes. I'm going to wrap this up. We'll get to the next disc in the next couple days. But yeah, I'm applauding. Oh, and the other thing, I wrote like Ed Mann. Feels like Ed Mann's finally getting that Ruth Underwood love. Where like all the Ruth Underwood tours, you're like, you got to make sure Ruth is high in the mix because it's Ruth. We're now getting that Ed Mann love. Whoever mixed this is a Travers mix, right? It's like, I don't know if he does the mixing by himself or he has help or who's doing the mixing. I know it says in the liner notes. I'm bad with those things. The mix is fantastic. And thank you for the Ed Mann love. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. That's all I got. Check out this listen. It is fantastic. Talk about disc 2 in the next day or two. But yeah, good times. Peace. Talk to you later.